Good to be here.
When you hit the waiver wire, obviously 31 teams could get you. What is it like to be in Seattle, close to home?
I mean, it's crazy. It's just kind of how all this stuff works out. Obviously being from here, it's pretty cool, pretty unique. So I'm excited for this opportunity. I'm super fortunate and thankful, and Coach Carroll and his staff for let me have this opportunity to go out and continue to grow and develop and learn from another tremendous QB in that room. And there's three good quarterbacks in that room. So just excited for this new opportunity and ready to dive in and hit it running.
How many times did you dream of being the Seahawks quarterback when you were a kid in the back?
I mean, yeah, I grew up 45 minutes from here, so watched every game on Sundays and Mondays and Thursdays, and it's like you go down these hallways, and I remember watching each of those specific plays in every game. So it's a really unique and special opportunity, and my family's excited. They're happy that I'm home. It'll be a little bit easier to come see me here and there, but no, overall I'm just excited.
Were you surprised Indianapolis waived you?
This is a business up here, so sometimes things like that happen. It's a reality check, definitely. It doesn't ever feel good to be the guy that gets cut, but now we're here. Now I got a new opportunity to go and grow. So next one thing happens, one thing leads to another, and now we're here. So I'm super excited, super fortunate again, and ready to roll.
Can you describe the whirlwind there? Probably for a week or two, you thought you were going to start the opener against these guys, and now it's ended up in a month.
Yeah, it's been a lot in terms of what was going on in Indy with everything happening there with Carson and COVID protocols and this and that going on. It was a lot, but I think everything you go through kind of makes you stronger, and you continue to grow from those situations. And I did everything I could to put myself in the best possible situation, but ultimately it's not my decision who plays and who gets what. And I have nothing but love and respect for the staff in the locker room in Indy. Those guys are a special group and a great group. But sometimes things happen, and look where we are now. So no, I'm fired up and excited to be here, and yeah.
I shouldn't put words in your mouth. How much did you think you were starting against the Seahawks in the opener?
I mean, yeah. I mean, 100%. You got to have that mindset, because we didn't know what was going to happen. There's so much unknown with COVID and injuries and this and that. You got to have that mindset for the next guy up, and you got to be ready to handle that opportunity. So if my name was called, I was, been ready to go, and ultimately it wasn't. But still took my opportunity in that moment to prepare like I was the guy just in case, and ultimately ended up being a different situation, but still dialed in the game plan and would have been ready to go if the situation was different.
I remember back at the Combine, you and Jake Luton talking about growing up in the same area and being even flag football teammates. And it's crazy now you're NFL teammates.
Yeah, no, that's another crazy story. Starting out in flag football together and being from 15 minutes, going to rival high schools and and even playing against each other in college when he was at Oregon State. That's a cool story. Jake's a great guy. He's been, I've known him for a long time. Looking forward to kind of picking his brain and working with him up there in the QB room. And so, no, I'm fired up about that. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of what feels like crazy developments, but just taking it one day at a time, and super excited to be here.
You were his right tackle, right?
Right or left? I can't remember. It was so long ago, I can't remember. But yeah, that was my first year ball. He was a year older than me, so he got the reins at quarterback, and I got to block for him. So.
How do you think you're different as a quarterback now from the time you got out of UW and through the year in Indy and all that? And
yeah. I think just the involvement of the things beyond just throwing and catching a football. The defensive structure side of it. The checks, the this, that, everything. I mean, just it's been two years since I was in college, and the game's pretty different up here, and you got to be dialed in on the X's and O's of things. So I've had a lot more time and a lot more people around me to help me out in that department. So I think just in terms of my football IQ. That's gone up. Obviously, there's still a ton of room for improvement and all those things, and that's the cool thing about all this. I'm in another situation where I got tremendous people around me to continue that development. So I think that that's been the biggest area fundamentally and X's and O's wise has been the biggest area.
How did you feel you played in the preseason this year? I know you didn't get that chance last year due to COVID and all that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was, again, I was, super excited to get the opportunity to go out there and play, even though it was preseason. I thought I went out there and did some good things. Obviously, being my own biggest critic, there's a lot of things I wish I could go back and fix up. But, it's preseason. It was my first time going out there and playing in a while. So ultimately, just being out there on the field again felt really good. And putting some drives together and leading the team was awesome. So, I thought I was able to do some good things, and there's other things, that I'd like to clean up. So, I mean, that's kind of how it goes every game, So always ready to build upon what you show.
What was the name of yours and Jake's flag football team?
It was the Lake Stevens. We were the Bengals. I'm not sure if it was the Lake Stevens Bengals or what it was, but we were the Bengals.
And then you were conference rivals, right?
Yeah. So he was. I think Marysville Pilchuck was in Wesco when I was in high school. I'm not sure if they are anymore. They might be, but I'm not sure on that. Don't quote me on that.
What was your experience at UW like after coming from Georgia?
It was cool, and it was just like coming home again. I grew up right around that area, and I knew the coaching staff from recruiting very well. I spent a lot of Saturdays up there on Montlake, and so coming home and putting the purple and gold on was awesome. Again, family being able to be there, and my biggest supporters in my backyard was huge. So it was cool. Coach Peterson was an outstanding coach, and ran a great program, and so I was able to dive into that and learn and grow in that situation. So it was a great area, great place to come back to.
Have they told you here sort of, I guess, what your role is, or, I mean, that you're just competing to be the backup, or sort of?
Yeah, no, I mean, they haven't really said anything specific. I'm just kind of, I got in here yesterday and trying to dive in the playbook and just take it, take in as much as I can and take it a day at a time. But whatever my role is, I'm going to do my best, put my best foot forward and attack it. So, again, Coach Carroll's an outstanding football coach, and I'm excited to, be able to learn in his system, and, with Russell and Gino and Jake and Danny, all those guys, fired up.
Had you ever been in this building before yesterday?
I have been, or I've seen it, and I think I've been in here once or twice when I was younger, but I'd never, not gone through all the rooms and stuff. This is a really, really, really nice facility. Pretty special place they got going on over here, so fired up to be a part of it.
Bobby Wagner gave you some award like 6 years ago or something, right?
That he did, yeah. That was pretty cool. And he came up to me after the week 1 game, said what's up, kept it brief, but it's pretty cool to be able to look back on that, and now all of a sudden we're on the same team. And I don't want to put a quote out there, but he might have said something about playing against or playing with in the future. So it's pretty cool that how it's all turning out. So another one of those guys that's a huge leader on this team that now I get to call a teammate, and that's pretty special.
Anything else, guys?
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.